Welcome back to week 4, day 5 of our book study of A Faith That Will Not Fail. We're reading this book together, podcasting on it, and having a conversation with you both digitally and in person about this book. And I'm Rustin.
I'm Mike.
I'm Tammy.
And we're glad you're here with us. Today is the title of today is Absolute Surrender. God will work surrender within us. Like, that's one of the statements she makes in this. And I actually love that. Like, for me, I think one of the things I love about this chapter is how, like, when you think about a kid and a kid developing their identity, that there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of moments in our life, and that God gives us room for that. Like, that God is consistently working surrender into us is actually, I think, really beautiful and shows a process movement to this versus a moment where, like, okay, I'm mature, I'm surrendered in my faith, you know?
Well, and surrender, I mean, gosh, it's a lot harder to do than you think, right? The idea of what she talks about the cancer the third time, right? And her statement of, I have far less control than I think I do. And, you know, that, how relieving and how real is that statement, right? Because we put so much work into trying to get the perfect look, the perfect family, the perfect Instagram feed, the perfect, you know, all those things. And, you know, what can we really control?
I think I left myself kind of reading this and wondering, what does failure look like to me? So if there's something I'm afraid of, if there's something I'm fearing that I'm going to fail in that, like, that's where I need to kind of lean into surrender the most. And we all have different definitions of failure.
Yeah, I like that. I love how she uses Peter in this chapter and talks about, you know, that just before Jesus goes to the garden, Peter's fighting with Jesus, saying that I will go to you to death, right? That I'm willing to die for you. And then the first thing he does in the garden is pull out his sword and cut off the ear of a religious scholar at the time. And Jesus puts it back on, and you see this transition. And then even then, like, Jesus, when it comes time for Jesus to be crucified and the trials and all that, Peter denies him 3 times. And she makes the point in this that Peter was willing to follow Jesus as long as Jesus looked like Peter wanted him to look, as long as he was the Messiah that Peter wanted.
Yeah, this powerful Messiah.
And as Peter was in this space of, wait, God's different than I thought God was. I don't know what to do now, right? And that growth moment of, man, like, the ideas I've had of God have grown and shifted, and God isn't the image that I've made God to be. God is bigger than that and different than that. What do we do? How do we surrender in our faith in that space too, and say, but even yet, God has a greater plan in revealing who God is that's worth surrendering to.
Yeah, I would say, you know, like, talking about what you said a few days ago, the idea of the people hitting that wall, right? Is your faith, is your theology big enough that when you hit life's walls, that God can change? God can't change. But no, you know, our understanding, our the way we think he works in this world may not be limited to the way we think it is, right? And so when God, when we hit that wall, will our theology allow us, like Peter, to say, maybe I was wrong, or maybe God's different than I think, and help us get through that hard time, and allow us to surrender to what God's doing versus what we want and hope that he does.
Yeah, I think when I look back to, you know, I was 18 and wanting to be a mom, like, that's something I was praying for all along. And then Phil and I faced infertility. And so it's like, okay, where is this faithful God in all this when I want to be a mom? And now I am a mom of a 9 and a 10-year-old. And, like, I find God to be so faithful, but in that dark moment of, like, when am I ever going to get pregnant? And then we didn't. And we have a beautiful kind of story on the other end, going through adoption with our girls. But that's not what I had planned when I was 18. And so I had to change. God had me all along.
And the passion that God put in the fabric of your DNA of being a mom was real.
Yeah.
Right?
Very real.
It wasn't God didn't mess up by putting that in you and then infertility happening in your life.
Absolutely.
you are a great parent, right? You are a mom who loves your girls more than anything in this world. And that, like, to me is this, and that's what I see I wish she would have put this in there about the rest of Peter's story of how he still didn't get it. and then, you know,
Multiple
Jesus
times.
has been resurrected and he's walking on a shoreline with Peter and having this conversation. And that's what I love is, like, God's not done. God's never done with us, not on this lifetime or not in the next to come, that God is moving and shifting with us as we become deeper connected to what God is actually doing in this world. And he says, Peter, like, do you love me?
You know I do.
Do you love me? Do you love me? And then, you know, and Peter is adjusting, and I love that piece of this, and I think it's a good close to this week of surrender is hard. You know, as a culture, we're built to, you know, we value type A people. We value control. We value
the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
this is a different plan.
Listen, there is a plan. It's God's plan. You know, let go of the tight wrists and release and find a way of surrender. But even if you can't, God's going to be there with you. God is going to be present and offer his abundant grace to help us let go and connect to him in meaningful ways. The 5-minute... the 5-minute
faith builder at the end, what is holding you back from surrender? And how is that working out for you? What would it take for you to relinquish control? Just spend some time in that. If you feel comfortable, please make a note in the comments. We want to be walking alongside of you, and we know this is hard.